Okay, in this lecture, I'm going to show you how we can cut or copy and paste rows and columns. Now, often data needs to be arranged to make it readable and also for formulas in order for some of them to work. For example, the VLOOKUP formula. Okay, so to cut or copy rows, for example, all you have to do is just select the rows that you want. Now you can select just one row or multiple rows. Then, once you've selected them, you can just right click and go to either cut or copy. So whichever action you do, cut or copy, you'll get the zigzag animation line going once you do either action. So for example, if I choose copy here, you can see that we get this animated line coming here, which denotes basically that we've copied an object in Excel. Then let's say I wanted to insert it here, for example. All you have to do then is just right click and go to paste. And you can see that the 3 rows have been copied in. Now similarly, if you want to copy columns, the procedure is exactly the same. One thing to note, folks, is that when you do a paste action, the original copy area of what you did or cut area remains in terms of the actual zigzag line. Now to cancel that zigzag line, you can just press escape. And what Excel will do will just revert to where you last pasted that row, which was just here. But if you scroll back up, you'll see that the zigzag line has gone. And also, folks, when you press escape, it also clears Excel's memory of anything copied inside it. So if I just click here, you can see that paste special has been grayed out, as well as the paste option as well, because we've actually cleared out Excel's memory by pressing escape. So you can't paste anything in essence because there's nothing copied in or cut it in. Okay, so to do columns, let's say for example we wanted to move country and put it here. So instead of copying, we want to cut. So once the column's selected, just right click, go to cut, click in the top cell here, and then just go paste. And you can see that country has been pasted here. Now you can click on this column here, folks, right click and go delete if you want to close the gap. So we're going to do that there. Okay, now let's say you wanted to copy rows and instead of putting them towards the end of the data, put them in between other rows. So what you need to do is simply select the rows you want. So let's say we're taking rows 14 to 16 again. Right click, go to copy. Now wherever you want to insert your data, you simply find that row and then click one below it and highlight that row. Then right click and you'll get the option to say insert copied cells. At which point you can click that and your copied rows will be inserted between the corresponding rows. So for example, let's say we wanted to insert our 3 copied rows below row 25. What you need to do is then select row 26, right click and go insert copied cells. And you can see our copied rows have been inserted between row 25 and this entry here, which was formerly row 26. So remember, folks, always go one below. Now similarly, folks, if you wanted to move rows to another part of the sheet, but again in between different other rows, you can do that. And what happens when you do move it, folks, Excel will close that gap of where your rows were. So just to give you an example, what I'm going to do is highlight rows 12 to 15 in yellow. Then I'm going to right click and go to cut. Now folks, what I'm going to do now that we've cut our rows is move it below row 20. And what will happen is when we move those cut cells, the yellow will disappear from here to show you that the gap has been closed. So just to make it a bit more clearer, I'm going to highlight this row, but I'll make this a green just so that you can see where we're actually cutting the rows and inserting them. Because once this gap closes, everything will shift up slightly, folks. So now that I've put this in green, I'm going to click on the row below, right click, and then go insert cut cells. Now, when I do this, rows 12 to 15, which are currently highlighted in yellow and with a zigzag line, will appear here. There. See that, folks? Now, our previous row 20 has shifted up by 4, and our yellow, which was previously here, has shifted here because that was part of our cut cells, which we cut into Excel's memory. So that's how you cut and insert rows between different rows. And similarly for columns, it's the same thing. Now, notice that when you did it for columns, and we actually moved a column, it didn't close the gap. So remember, you can always close that gap just by selecting that empty column and then deleting it to close the gap. However, if you inserted a column between two other columns, it would close the gap. So just to give you an example, if you just highlight your column, right click and go to cut. Now when you insert your cut columns, Excel will insert it to the left hand side of whatever column you select. So in this case, we want to go between C and D. So what you need to do is basically select column D, right click and go insert cut cells. And then you see the former column C has shifted to the left and is now column B. And column B is now inserted between the previous columns of C and D. And if that's a tongue twister, folks, in essence, we've just swapped them round. Okay, so that concludes this lecture. We have seen how we can cut, copy, and paste rows and columns. Now, if there are any questions or queries, please do feel free to reach out. Thank you.